best podcast, the Heidelcast.
It's a Heidelminicast. And now, Scott Clark.
How much should pastors tell their wives about what's happening behind the scenes in the church?
If the Heidelcast helps you, won't you help us keep it going? Please make the coffer clink by clicking on the PayPal link or by sending a check to Heidelberg Reformation Association, 1637 East Valley Parkway, number 391, Escondido, California, 92027.
If you enjoy the Heidelcast, won't you help us grow it? Won't you share it with your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, anyone whom you love? We'd like to have you share it with them so that they can enjoy the benefits and the blessings of the Heidelcast. You can find everything you need for the Heidelcast at heidelblog.net/Heidelcast. You can subscribe and find us on any podcast platform. We are everywhere, and we're 5 days a week providing lots of content. And so you can also subscribe to heidelblog.net on any Heidelblog page. Just type in your email address. We don't do anything bad with it. And we will send you a daily email rundown of what's on the Heidelblog so that you'll know and you can share that with your friends.
The Heidelcast.
Sometime back, Megan Hill, a Presbyterian pastor's wife, was writing about what pastors should tell their wives and what they shouldn't tell them. And I can answer that question in one word. Now, we're talking about what's happening behind the scenes. We're talking about things that are not publicly known, as it were, within the congregation. And when it comes to stuff that's being discussed by the ministers and the elders in session meetings, not, financial business in the church or things that are published in the bulletin or published in reports by the consistory or the session to the congregation, but things about church discipline, those sorts of things, counseling issues. There's a one-word answer to what pastors should tell their wives, and that word is nothing. And I mean no confidential information. A pastor may tell his wife what he would tell other members of the congregation, but he shouldn't tell her any more than that. Of course, he can ask for prayer. He could tell his wife that he had a tough counseling session or a tough consistory meeting or session meeting. Those are the same bodies. Consistory is the Dutch and German way, maybe the French way of saying session, and session is the English, British way of, Scottish way of speaking. But he shouldn't say with whom he was meeting, because if he does that, then confidential becomes a little leaky as a concept, doesn't it? So I understand that you and I live in an age of hyper-transparency. I have my phone set up so that, and my wife's phone set up so that she can see where I am on the Find My app, and I can see where she is, and we can be, because of the phones, in more or less constant contact. And everybody shares everything that's happening in their lives on social media now. That's pretty common and accepted, especially by generations that are, younger than mine. The idea of privacy is actually pretty much gone, it seems like. But that, however true that is, and it seems true, it's no argument for ministers giving into the temptation to share with their wives what they learn in a session or a consistory meeting or in a counseling session. What happens in those meetings should stay in those meetings. What happens in the counseling room, unless it involves a criminal matter or needs to go to the session or the consistory, it should stay in the counseling room. It certainly should not go to the pastor's wife. And this is not sexism. This is mercy and wisdom. The pastor's wife is not called to pastoral ministry. She's not an unofficial co-pastor. Well, we had that conversation in my first church when I was called, because churches, and they were great. I'm not alleging or suggesting anything untoward, but this was a conversation that we had, that my wife is a member of the congregation, and that's it. And they were great. They said, we understand that, we accept that, and that was a great blessing. But in some places, congregations like to treat the pastor's wife as an unpaid, unofficial co-pastor. but the pastor's wife isn't ordained, or if she is, she shouldn't be. Her vocation relative to the visible church is to be faithful to the due use of ordinary means, to love her husband, her family, the congregation, her neighbors, and that's it. And there are 5 reasons why the pastor's wife does not need to know what the pastor knows about confidential information.
Call or text now 760-618-1563.
First, few things are as difficult in ministry as knowing what pastors and ruling elders know. I've seen that burden of knowing what's going on behind the scenes add lines to the faces of pastors and ruling elders. You watch a newly elected ruling elder, look at his face the day before he's elected to office, and then look at his face after his first consistory meeting or his first session meeting. And I have seen over the years a discernible change. Pastors are called to carry this burden and to lay it before the Lord in prayer and to trust him with it. Those who learn to file it somewhere, they survive. Those who do not learn to sort of compartmentalize that stuff, for whom it remains in the forefront of their consciousness, they're probably not going to survive pastoral ministry. The pastor's wife is not a ruling elder. She's not a minister, and she's not called to carry that burden. And in this way, it's a little bit like being the spouse of a police officer or something else, some other government official, or maybe a trauma surgeon, right? Trauma surgeons and maybe other surgeons as well, police officers, medics, people who work with EMS. They see lots of things that they really don't need to be sharing with their spouse. Their spouse hasn't been trained to deal with this. They don't have the categories. They don't have the experience. They don't have the ability to compartmentalize. And sharing some of the things that cops and surgeons and medics see, that can be devastating. And the same is true for pastors. So that's the second point here. It's better for the pastor that his wife not know. When a pastor comes home from a difficult home visit, it's a great relief to see his wife, who's blissfully unaware of what has just transpired. If she knows, then he never really leaves it behind. There's no refuge. If he comes home from a difficult session or consistory meeting, and if she knows everything, then the session meeting has just changed locations. And that really doesn't help him. He needs her, by grace alone, to be free to love him and the rest of the congregation in the freedom of not knowing. He needs that more than he needs an ally against the obstreperous session member or that seemingly intractable counseling case. Third, it's not good for the pastor's family to know everything that's going on. One leak may lead to others. If the pastor's wife is not called to know and carry this burden, then certainly the children are not called, nor are they equipped to deal with it. Leave the kids out of it. There's a reason that pastors' kids can grow up bitter toward the church. Pastors need to resist the temptation to find vindication for themselves by unloading their burden on their kids. Fifth, it's not good for the congregation. Trust is a difficult thing to foster, and it is easily damaged. It may take years for a congregation to trust the minister enough to confide in him and to seek from him the help that they need if he is talking to others who are not entitled to know about the things that take place in confidence. A careless word to his wife may destroy all that in a moment, and that trust may never be restored. The members of the congregation should not look at her and wonder what she knows about them. Now, don't misunderstand. The pastor is not a priest. He must keep the confidences that he may, but when it comes to criminal matters, or those things that have to go to the session or the consistory, he is bound to do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Clark.
Nevertheless, most things should be kept in confidence, and those right between the minister's 2 ears. The good news is that as the years pass, many of them just sort of slip away into the ether. I know that I've heard many things, but right now, as I'm talking to you, I can't remember many of them. I can see faces, I can see tears, but honestly, the particulars just don't really come back. Now, to be fair, some of those things, some of those meetings, some of those counseling sessions are still very fresh. But a lot of it is gone, and that is a mercy from God. By Christ's undeserved favor, with the Spirit's help, and with the Father's love, it can be done. This keeping of confidences, it must be done. It's a matter of divine vocation. It's a matter of integrity. God has called his ministers to hear confessions, to offer reminders of forgiveness and counsel. But the same is not true of every member of the congregation. And that's what the pastor's wife is. That's what the pastor's children are. They are members of the pastor's congregation. And perhaps this is also, I think, implicitly, a practical argument against every member ministry. But that's something for another episode.
Thanks for listening. Tune in tomorrow for more from the Heidelcast, brought to you by Heidelberg Reformation Association.org. Don't forget, when the coin in the coffer clinks, the cost of bandwidth shrinks. Copyright Heidelberg Reformation Association. All rights reserved. This is a Heidel Media production.
The best podcast, the Heidelcast.